Travis Davis, retired United States Army, full career, and spent a lot of time doing some really cool stuff. He was a armored reconnaissance scout, spent a good deal of time in Germany, and he wrapped up his career at the 2nd Armored Cavalry Regiment at Fort Polk, Louisiana, which I'm thinking probably has a different name at this point.
That about chills up my spine when you just said that.
Oh, I hear you, brother. Anyone who's been to Fort Polk knows that, yeah, it's Fort Polk. So, brother, tell us about yourself. Tell us about your time in the military, and then we'll move on into talking about books.
Sure. So, at 6 weeks into the 11th grade, I quit high school. Oh. And that was Friday. Tuesday, I was in basic training, and evidently they talked about my mother. I didn't know they even knew her. I mean, they were just drill sergeants back then were a little different. Remember Drill Sergeant Pugh? He was about 5'8" and had to have a 58-inch chest. You know, Ranger from Vietnam. This guy just instilled like, I'm scared of this. I'm scared of him. I mean, deathly afraid of this guy. But he was an outstanding individual. So when I went to the before I joined, you talk to the career counselor, and I was sitting outside, and this captain sat next to me. He goes, "Hey, so what are you going to do?" I said, "Well, I've got a tele for repairman, and I've got a couple other jobs." He goes, "I want to hear about a job that's pretty cool." I go, "What's that?" He goes, "It's called the Armored Reconnaissance Specialist. It's 11 Delta. And this is what they do." And I'm 17 years old. I love outside. I was very athletic. I was like, "Oh, yeah." So I go in there, sign up. Recruiter comes, takes me home. He says, "Hey, what MOS did you pick?" I go 11 Delta. He goes, "Are you effing insane? You lost your mind." And then it started a 20-year romance with being a 11 Delta to 19 Delta, and I loved it. I spent time as a private, worked my way up to sergeant first class. I had a scout platoon, had section sergeant. The good thing about being a 19 Delta is my first assignment, I was in Delta Troop 1st and 4th Cav as Aero Scout. So we were in UE helicopters. These guys are Vietnam pilots. They would fly like their skin. They would fly these things. And then I went to Germany, armored tank, a 2nd ACR, first time. Then I went back and went back to Fort Hood. And I was the left front seat of a OH-58 Scout Observer.
Mm.
They had our MOS was also aerial observers. I loved it.
Wow.
A few air in the helicopters. Got to fly a Cobra gunship one time because we were ferrying aircraft down to Fort San Antonio, somewhere around there, and kept Billis, I think. Then I went back Germany, Scout platoon, 3rd Armored 3rd Infantry Division, taught at the Armor School at Fort Knox. Went back to Germany, had a Scout platoon in 364 Armor, and then retired as Assistant Operations Sergeant, 2nd ACR at Fort Polk. But in Germany, the first couple of times, 3-7 Cav, where General Shinseki was Lieutenant Colonel back then, and so I've known him a long time, that was the border guard. So I patrolled the East-West German border, Czechoslovakian border also.
Cool.
So you kind of see the firsthand the difference. It was like night and day, East Germany and West Germany. West Germany had been built up from the Marshall Plan through the 50s and 60s and 70s, very modern. You look over at East Germany, which they had, nothing from an infrastructure perspective, basically. And you could really tell that. And there is such a thing as an Iron Curtain. I've got a piece of the fence here at home. So there was. But if you hit that fence, you were 10 meters inside East Germany and you were in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
So I did a lot of that, loved it. And then I decided to get out and got into technology, worked for companies like EDS, Microsoft, Symantec, Alteris, and BMC, and a couple others. And then I retired a couple years ago and started writing 2 years ago, as a matter of fact. I got bored. So now I am a bus monitor on a special needs education bus in Allen Independent School District. So it gives me 3 hours in the morning. I get 5 hours to hang out and do my stuff. Then I got a couple more to hang out with the kiddos, great bunch of kids. And, keeps me out of trouble. My wife had been working for the school district for over 20 years almost. So that's me.
That's very cool.
Nice, man.
Yeah.
That is very cool.
Yeah.
I would love to be a bus monitor. I mean,
No, I tell you, these kids will come up I mean, they'll ask you questions like, "What in the world?" I mean, they're hilarious. I mean, you go write a book on it, but they're great kids, and sometimes they just need a little bit of, you know what, I'm for you, I'm here for you. Then a little bit of, tell me, talk to me, and then I'll talk to you. Just that interaction.
That's important. Kids need to know that people are listening to them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's all they need.
Yeah.
And when they act up, hey, stop. And because they know that, okay, I went a little too far. It's like when you're talking to an officer in the Army, right? You're good. He goes, excuse me, and they say Sergeant Davis. Then okay, I'm back to yes, sir. Trigger.
Yeah.
That's very cool. That's very cool. Hey, so I was looking at your bio on your page. It says that you also spent some time in Spain.
Yes.
I'm assuming that's when your dad was. It was your dad who was in the Air Force, correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yep.
So you weren't at Rota. You were at Torremolinos?
Terre Haute Air Force Base.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Man, that's been gone for a while.
Yeah. So I was like 2 years old when we went, and 5, but because we had a maid, right? I mean, I think everybody did. And my dad was a E6 in the Air Force. He didn't make any money, but we had somebody come clean the house, and because I was so young, I took up the language, so I started speaking fluent Spanish. That would translate back and forth, and because I would do that, my mom would dress me in the morning. I'd go outside, take all my clothes off, and run around with the Spaniards all day. And that was
as one does.
That's Francisco Franco days, right? So they had the LaGuardia, the police, and if you gave them like a tea or a meal, they would sit outside your house all night and guard it.
Wow.
It was, but Spain was beautiful. It's a beautiful country. Beautiful people.
Oh, it's fantastic. It's fantastic. Similar story. We were there for a while, and we ended up getting some little bit of domestic help. But she was from Colombia, and my son, he started speaking, Spanish as well, but he spoke it with a Colombian accent in Spain, which is, it's a little bit off, but very cool, very cool.
Well, I went to Mallorca. My wife's German, so when we were stationed in Germany, we went to Mallorca one time, and so I, get at the bar at the hotel. I go, no, dos grandes cerveza por favor, and this guy just starts speaking Spanish to me. I go, that's about it for right now. But he goes, man, you don't even have an accent. He said, you speak like a Spaniard. That's where I was engulfed in it, or just really immersed in it. But so that's kind of loved it. So I hit my head the first day where we lived. I hit my head on the back and had stitches. The day before we moved out, I hit my head in the front in the same spot on the corner of the house and put 3 stitches in my head. So
wow,
that's like bookends. So I was good.
It explains why you ended up in armored reconnaissance.
Probably explains a little bit of it.
So you're a writer, and you've got 2 books out. You've got Cobalt and Arc of Deception, but then you've got this new one, One of Four. So we can go straight into talking about One of Four. We can talk a little bit about the ones you've written before. I am particularly curious, and we spoke a little bit about this before we started rolling, about Arc of Deception, because I think it is quite literally one of the first times, if the only time, where the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency plays such central a role in a thriller. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so my son was in the Army. He was a 35 Golf. So when geospatial imagery intelligence analyst, and then when he did that, I started getting interested. I was reconnaissance, so I was always interested in maps and photos and things like that. So I really got into it, and I had an idea to write a book. And so I'm going to put the NGA as a pivotal spot in there, because a lot of them don't believe they're an intelligence agency, right? And so I said, what would be kind of cool if, some geospatial imagery intelligence analyst was overlooking some video or photos of the oil fields in Russia, and noticed that the flames went out in the flare stacks. They quit pumping. So they did some analysis and everything, and they couldn't figure out exactly what's going on. And they looked historical back at some others, And that basically set off a clandestine operation where the NGA actually went to the field and to Russia, because they went from the oil wells to the refinery to the shipping out, the whole supply chain, because they had to figure out what's going on. They figured out exactly what's going on, but they used this technology that I created called TOTH. And TOTH, I didn't know that later on I was talking to a guy that's in the oil business that actually exists, that they can, like a pipeline, different fluids give off different friction at different speeds at different volumes going through the pipe. So they can tell, gas, water, oil, whatever. So this TOTH application can basically, you can right click on something and it brings up a menu on the right side, has all the information about ambient temperature, speed, weight, everything. And then you can look at the left side, who did the analysis. So they thought, that's not right. It's, they're saying they're pumping, 15,000 gallons a minute through this pipeline of oil. They're not. It's 10,000 gallons. It's less. So there's deception of what's going on in Russia. And that's what they find out. At the same time, Russia, China, and India are moving their forces around the world and moving to the vital choke points of oil transportation in the world. And they don't know why. There's no reason for any kind of mass movement of troops. And Russia wants something that's been taken from them. And it goes into submarines. I have created what they call a mimic, which is a surface ship that can mimic a submarine. Or a drone can mimic any submarine in the Russian fleet, and you'll go after those. And then the submarine can mimic a surface ship with the signature, sonar signature. So whether that's true or not, I have no idea. I just make it.
Wow.
But I make sure I look at. I do a lot of research for the books.
No, that's very cool. And at a certain point, it's like there's going to be a limit to what you can actually, where you're going to make a departure from reality. And really the craft of writing is making that plausible enough for the reader.
Yes.
So
you don't want to go into the science fiction aspect of it, right? You want to keep it a thriller and somewhat like, that's possible. Then you find out later, well, that is possible. They had that. And then I kind of moved into Cobalt, where the same team, I created a team called Team Texarkana. Cobalt is where China discovers a rare form of cobalt in the Congo from a meteor crater. And as the meteor came through the atmosphere, something happened at the molecular level that now they can create miniature solar batteries that charge in, half the time, 50 or 60% less, store or better storage, smaller. And they also create a paint. They can paint their armored vehicles, which becomes a solar collector. So they put these batteries in their tanks and run them indefinitely. Then all they have to worry about is crew and food. They create they're Type 99 tanks. They go from a 4-man crew to 3-man 2 to a 2-man 2 crew, automatic loader, automatic gunner. Faster than what we can typically do in an M1 tank from a loader perspective and fire. But at the same time, these rogue Chinese generals are working with a group called VERG, a World Energy Revolutionary Group. And their goal is to take over the world through anarchy from climate change. So they're buying up land, they're buying up grocery stores, they're buying up transportation all over the world with the Chinese. And it's going to start where they're trying to take it over. And Team Texarkana goes and figures out what's going on. And I introduce, a couple new characters in it.
Nice.
Very cool. Very cool.
What is your
jump on that?
Yeah. What is your favorite? I'm a process guy.
Okay.
I'm more of a sci-fi thriller guy, like as far as more of my writing leans.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know, what is your favorite thing to create when it comes to world building? Is it the characters, or is it the dynamics of the world that they're living in?
The dynamics of the world and the technology.
Yeah, I like that. I think about when we talk to some of the thriller authors here, I think about it as like, it's not science fiction, but it's like scientific fiction.
Yeah.
There's Yeah, there's a lot of technology, and then there's just things that people just don't understand are actually existing. Like when you came up with your technology there,
Yeah.
and and then actually exists, And so it's like some of these things, like, and Dell recognizes from some of the conversations we've had before. There's things out there that people, if they just understood, they probably wouldn't sleep as well, at
I
night.
definitely wouldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not that I'm a conspiracy theorist, but it's crazy stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Travis, tell us about. I'm really intrigued about 104, your new book that comes out next week, because it just sounds like, it's historical. It's rooted in the past, rooted in World War One. It's a father-son story, which I think all of us, being dads, can definitely relate to. And more than just a father-son story, it's about connecting. A father and son whose relationship maybe I don't know, damaged is the right word, but
Yeah.
they're definitely estranged. And it just sounds like a beautiful story. So, brother, can you tell us about 104?
Sure. So 104, I had the idea for the book, and I was talking to my son about it, and he goes, "Dad, hey, put what about a father and son that are estranged? Can you work that in?" I go, "Oh, that's perfect." So 104, it's not a war book. It's a book about war, and it's about what can happen not only to the combatants, but people that are in the war zone, and also about the families of when those heroes come home. What's affecting them. And I wanted to tell the story, and I had to be, the one thing that was on my mind, I had to be respectful for the soldier that lays in state at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. That was I had to do that. So I created a main character in a book with no attributes. Other than he's a man, married, and has a son. I don't know how tall he is. I don't know what color eyes he has. I don't know anything about him. Nothing. And I did it on purpose. And then I wrote it in the first, second, and third person. So it's very dynamic book.
Interesting.
But it starts off with, how was that soldier selected to be entombed? And it goes into, and that's historical. Four caskets were chosen from the 4 American cemeteries in France in 1921, October, and Sergeant Younger selected the one, put a spray of white roses on the casket, and that soldier then became entombed in the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. So that's how it starts. Then that's 1921. Then it goes back to 1918, and how was this Bible found, or the diary? How was the diary found by a French girl? Watches them get decimated, right? But wants to help the Americans because she knows what they've gone through. She's seen the American soldiers walk by, and she can see in their eyes that there's something about tremendous loss, tremendous pain, missing their home, missing their family. She can see that in their eyes. So she has empathy for them. So she gets the diary, takes it home. She can't read English because she saw these soldiers getting killed, and she saw one that was heroic, and that's the one that she went there, his hand was outstretched holding a diary. His diary. And all soldiers in World War I were given diaries to write in because they thought that was a way to be able to help with the stress of combat. So, she takes it and she wants to tell the Americans. So a patrol comes by, and so this fiction part, Sergeant Younger goes and tries to identify the soldiers. 9 of them, 8 can be identified, 1 can't. The one they can't, but he has a feeling. And he has that same feeling as he selected the soldier to go into the tomb. So he didn't, And then it starts off, the father and son buy a Bible in a bookstore. What happens to the girl? They can read the book. They buy the Bible in the bookstore. They don't know what's in it. They get home. And the lady that works in the bookstore, she said, "Where'd you get this?" The son goes, "Over there." And she goes, "I just cleaned that. That wasn't over there." that I've never seen this before. And so they buy it, 20 euros, take it back to the hotel. Dad pops the lock, which is the first sign of the reconnection. You know, Dad did something right, didn't break anything. And then the son Walter goes to sleep. Alex starts read the Bible page by page, looks at it, beautiful, the pictures, the maps, 140-year-old Bible. In the middle, there's a diary, there's a book inside the Bible. And he said, Dad, there's something in here. So he picks it up and he feels something and puts it back, like, oh, you know, and says, hey, you want to take it back? No. So he said, Dad, there's a letter in it, what happened? And it's like, Dad, I think it wants to be read. It wants me to read it. It needs to be read, but I'm going to read it like a book. And I'm not going to jump around. And it starts June 1917 with the first expeditionary unit and goes through World War I. And as he's reading, and they retrace his footsteps. As they're reading it, they're going back and you can see them connecting back, and they're learning about the war, and they're learning about themselves and all the dynamics that goes, why was his dad, angry sometimes? He's a veteran, he's got PTSD, so all that. So they talk about it, and then they say, hey, let's go to the cemetery. He doesn't feel it, and then they decide to go to Tomb of the Unknown Soldier and leave the diary at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier.
Wow. So that's awesome. So it's like
it is.
So it's a relationship between the father and the son coming together, finding themselves, and finding their commonalities back, rebuilding their relationship through this this scenario. That's beautiful.
Yeah, and the battle scenes. People read the book. The battle scenes are descriptive. They are very. That's what I wanted to do. And I didn't read any letters or diaries of any World War I soldiers when I wrote the book. Yeah. I don't want their story. That's their story. I want his story, right? That hero. I want his story. So wrote it like that. And in the postscript, it has the great information, but it's not. It's a leadership book. I wrote it from the perspective of an NCO. You're in the middle of the column, right? You for command and control. You eat last. You check on your men. All these things. It's how he came from a private up to a corporal, and that leadership that he built. There's no names in the book, in his diary, none at all. There's only like some nicknames, but you can't tell really anything about those nicknames. And how he helps other soldiers overcome their fear.
That's awesome.
Wow.
It's a powerful book, to say the least, I think.
It sounds fantastic. And, it's interesting because, I know that you are a member of the Sergeant Morales Club, and I will fully confess that there was a point in my life where I thought Sergeant Morales had been an actual person. And a lot of people make that mistake, but then you come to realize it's like, no, Sergeant Morales is a fictional individual, but represents really the core of what we want and expect NCO leaders to be. So it's interesting to me because you are, you've written this awesome book, which I can't wait to get my hands on.
Yeah.
And it, in a way, reflects kind of like who Sergeant Morales is.
Yes. Yeah, and I didn't realize that until after I wrote it. I mean, I've got the Sergeant Morales creed, up here. And because, his whole story, Puerto Rican didn't speak much English, Spanish, and grew and joined the Army, learned to speak English, but took care of his men, right? Maxed out his PT test, set the example. And that's what I did in the book, because I was thinking to myself, no disrespect at all. That was my main goal for the soldier that's entombed. But if you're thinking, who could be the soldier? He's a leader. He's a hero. He's spiritual. He's a God-fearing man. He's a family man, and he loves his country. knows what he's doing, but as he changes, there's a part in the book where the cavalry rides by, charging American cavalry, and the machine gun fire. They're attacking, and then the battle's over. The horses are dead, and the soldiers, and he starts weeping for the horses, not for the soldiers, because the horses didn't volunteer.
Yeah.
And he asks himself, has he lost empathy for man? So he goes through these struggles in his mind. I mean, I felt I had to write it. I was 50,000 words into the third volume of Team Texarkana and stopped and took this book up. And the research, I learned so much. I've always been, for the last few years, very interested in World War I, because we're living through it right now again, with the way that the countries are divided and put together and whatever else. But it was the first war of modern warfare: machine guns, gas, airplane, artillery, like it was, accurate artillery, right? Everything. So I stopped and I did a lot of research, read some books, did a lot, and then okay, First Expeditionary Unit. I read the whole history of that, First Infantry Division, right now, what it's called. And it kind of goes through the battles. But if somebody took the book and say, you know what, I'm gonna retrace this soldier, you could do it. You could go to where they went. You could go to where he went. Full circle.
That is very cool.
I was in D.C. last weekend. My son lives there, and I actually gave a book to the 3rd Infantry Old Guard.
Oh wow!
Yeah, to the regimental PAO, because I dedicate the book to the Sentinels.
Wow.
Guard.
That is very cool. That is very cool. And you can't overstate the historical significance of it. And I think a lot of times World War I gets forgotten about, not unlike Korea. And it's interesting. One of the things you mentioned about these technological advances, and it was a technology-driven war, but at the same time, we have this thing called like adaptational lag, right? So we introduced tanks to the battlefield in World War I, right? We don't actually get good at using them in combined arms warfare until World War II. And that's just one example, like helicopters. Helicopters went into production in 1943, like literally at the end of World War II. We don't really learn how to use them for much until Korea. And Korea, the military starts using them for medevac, but civilians don't use helicopters for medevac until the mid-1960s. So it's awesome that you're going in and taking us back to, before the greatest generation, back to World War I. Because you're right. There are echoes of what our society is dealing with today. It's fascinating to me. There's if you've ever been to Valley Forge in Pennsylvania, there's a statue dedicated to Baron von Stübing, and it was literally donated by Friends of Germany or Friends of America or something like that in 1918. And there's a clear, direct connection to World War I, in that you had, all this societal tension that was going on at the time, and an effort to kind of limit that angst. But thank you for doing this, man. That is, I can't wait to get my hands on it. It's going to go right to the top of my TBR pile.
The French had a tank in World War I. It was a 13-man crew. Look at the tanks now. I mean, the Warsaw Pact, not Warsaw Pact anymore, Russia and China, a lot of those have 3-man crews. The United States had a 4-man crew on the M1. So look at those advances. And then you look at who was in World War I: MacArthur, Patton, Truman, Dulles, the CIA, right? All these people were in there, and how they went up through World War II, how they impacted the 20th century, and some, 21st century.
Yeah.
So the 20th century, so that impacts in there. And I did put some, lead way a little bit with some history. But one thing I did want to do is I put a scene in the book that historically is correct, that the lieutenant was awarded the Medal of Honor.
Mm. Yeah.
Time frame was exactly the same. The battle,
Mhm.
everything. I just wanted to put
Wow.
because this hero saw another hero,
Mm-hmm.
and he couldn't believe the heroic and the actions of this lieutenant. He was amazed.
Mm.
He never seen anything like that before. I mean, these people would get up and run in a wall of machine gun fire. And people would drop by them, 2s and 3s at a time.
Mm.
And they kept on running and running and running and running and running. It's amazing to read about it.
That's amazing. And it's important to recognize history. So thank you for definitely for putting that out there.
Oh, thank you.
It's important to recognize history because, as cliche as it sounds, history repeats itself. And if we don't recognize the things that we've done in the past, it's just like burning your hand on the stove over and over again and never realize, oh wow, that hurts. Like we're obviously, like you said, we're in a space and time right now where things feel repetitive from what they used to be from that time. And if we don't see these patterns and say, hey, you know what, that happened before, we're not going to do that again. And stories like this, I think, help us recognize and remember who we are, and give us that courage and that tenacity to push forward.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we're we only got one planet. We try to all get along.
We got to. I mean, getting along is all we got, right?
And something else that you brought up in passing, and we talk about veterans and PTSD and PTS. And I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about it, but I love the fact that you touched upon it, because too frequently we think that this is some aberration that came out of the last 20 years.
Oh, yeah, no.
And the reality is we just call it something different. In World War I,
the 1,000-yard stare. The 1,000-yard stare.
Being shell-shocked.
Yep.
The reality is, regardless of what epic of history you're talking about, if you saw the elephant, if you had to dance with the elephant, you came out of it with PTS or PTSD to some level. We just called it different things and we dealt with it in different ways. So, But thank you for doing that, because I think that's an important lesson for people to hear.
Yeah, because his son never knew that his dad experienced it. Never knew.
Yeah.
But his dad confesses.
Yeah. Yeah, you get to a broader understanding of people when you get to see what when you walk in their shoes, when you see their struggles. And then I relate this, might be off topic a little, but I relate this to like traveling. When I go to travel places and I experience a new culture, I understand them so much better when I come home. I come home and I'm like, oh, I get it. Oh, okay. So now it's just like you can build so much more patience with people when you understand what the shoes they're walking in.
I'd love to travel. It's important to learn other people's cultures, because 99% of the world, somebody lives here from one of those cultures. So might as well understand what they're doing.
That's why they're doing what
they're doing.
Exactly.
That's crazy, but no, for them, that's what they do. It's culture. Yeah.
That's why I start the podcast all the time with humans. It's like, what's up, humans? Because it's important to identify, hey, this is who we are as people. We may go after each other for different reasons because of land or whatever it is, but we're all human beings on this planet. And like we said earlier, the only thing we have is to get along with each other. We're all on this little rock together, and we got to figure it out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
100%.
And Travis, I want to tell you, this is something that just kind of like popped up in my head. I really do, I'm not saying that I'm lying nor misrepresenting the truth, but I really do want to read this book, One of Four. And the deal. As a writer, you're constantly reading other people's stuff. And I think what really strikes me at the core of the story that you talked about is that father-son relationship. Because I don't know about you, I can only speak for myself. I still have not come to a place where I feel comfortable talking about my wartime experience with my kids. I'll nip around the edges of it, but that's kind of like something that's just for me and the guys I was there with. So I really look forward to this, even if it in some way, helps me figure out how to bridge that gap.
Yeah, and I don't want to write it for a broad audience, right? Not just military or anything, but relationships and how can you, by doing, and what brings them together basically is doing something together.
Yeah.
That they both found a common interest in, that at this onset you never would have thought that. But Alex, the kid, now wants to learn more, about his dad, but also about World War One and history itself. And then, the father, Walter, kind of spills the beans about him and why his ex-wife, why he got divorced. His son didn't know that. You can see the relationship build over time, because I make some very graphical, illustrations in the book.
Wow.
I really look forward to getting my hands on a copy, brother.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it needs to be made into a movie. I go, if they do, they can never show the face of the actor.
That would be a hard sell.
They can show a side view, but they can never, because even the soldier in the book, when he has dreams, right, he can see everybody else, but he can never see himself. Because
you literally have to find like a hand model.
Yeah. You know how they show my face.
So in your head, it's like a first-person perspective.
Yes.
In the movie, so people are interacting directly to the camera. Yes. Interesting.
What was that? It was a World War II movie that came out in the last couple of years, but it was 1918. Yeah. When it's movie. Like one take.
Yeah. Very good. I actually reached out to the producer. Sent an email. I haven't heard anything back. Probably won't. But because I have an IMDb page. My nephew wrote a screenplay and asked me if I'd pay for the movie. Short flick. The movie was great, so I paid for it. So now I have an IMDb page. I'm the executive producer of a movie. So
nice.
Very cool.
Never tell anybody, if you do that, I'll pay for it. Not expecting them to do it.
You're going places, brother. You're going places.
Yes.
Executive producer today. Who knows what tomorrow?
Let's monitor today.
That is fantastic. That is fantastic. So I got a question for you, because I mean we're getting close to the end of our time, but so you're in Texas, correct?
Yes.
So have you connected with some of the other writers that are out there in Texas, guys like Jack Stewart?
Yes, I had coffee with him the other day.
Love him. He is such an awesome dude. I think David McCluskey's out there. Taylor Moore's out there. Don Bentley.
Yeah, he lives down in Austin and Round Rock area. Well, really why I moved here for a job. The other is it has direct flights all over the world, because I don't like to change in airports. And I did a lot of traveling when I worked for EDS and Alteris and Symantec and whoever else, Microsoft. So that way I get on a plane, get there, boom, back.
Yeah, nice.
Very awesome. Well, that is so cool that we know some of the same people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a book signing. My book launch is on the 4th here in a brewery. I like beer. And here in Allen, Arbor Brewery. And Jack said if he's in town, he's going to come stop by and everything. He's a fantastic guy. Great conversation.
He is such a good guy. Love him to death. That is fantastic. Because Jack's kind of he's like the Bono of the writing world. He just kind of shows up.
So I had to ask him one question. So I said, okay, when you land, do you stick it or do you use all the runway? He goes, I stick it. I put it on the deck. because you can tell an Air Force pilot versus a Marine Corps Navy pilot when you land. Because the Air Force, they'll take the whole runway, 17,000 feet. They'll use the whole thing. Marine Corps Navy pilot, you see the runway. Like, okay, wow, we landed. Tail hook come down. What happened there?
That totally makes sense.
Now you're going to notice that when you're flying, like, oh, either that guy's a commercial pilot for the beginning, or he's in the Air Force, or that guy's Marine Corps Navy because he landed that bad boy. That's the twin at LaGuardia. You want somebody to take it real quick.
More power to him, man.
Yeah.
I jump out of a plane, that's fine. Fly that thing? Oh, hell no.
My wife, for my 50th birthday, she gave me a fighter pilot experience. So I got to go up in a 2-seat plane to do dogfights with the guy who flew F-16s. I thought I was in shape. I was wore hell out. I was exhausted.
Oh, I bet.
Wow.
Yeah. I bet.
Look outside. Thing, yeah. Don't look at the instrument. Look outside. Trust me.
Oh, man. Well, Brother Al, do you have any more questions for our esteemed guest?
No, this was a great conversation. I'm very much looking forward to this book. I really love the angle that you chose for the characters and the dynamic of the story, which is awesome. And I'm looking forward to it's a 4-book series. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I love a series. I just like diving in. So this is going to be great.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah. Fantastic. All right, Travis. So because you wrote Cobalt and your other book, this is a question that I ask every one of our guests who touches on the espionage space. Who's your favorite Bond? Now, I'm not saying that there's a right answer. I will say that there are some answers that are better than others.
Who's my favorite Bond?
Yeah,
I'm gonna say Sean Connery. I think that's
fair.
That's my favorite. But I do like the Daniel Craig too.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all good
choices.
They're all good. I've got the whole collection upstairs, and I tell you, I don't know how many times I watched Goldfinger, and I'm like, well, this is great, And yeah, I love the movies.
Yeah, no, they're all fantastic. Hey, brothers, thank you so much for making time to chat with us. Really, really enjoyed it, and I can't wait to get my hands on a copy of 104.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
you guys have a good day.
You too.